In the far north of Scotland, on the Moray Firth, the town of Buckie stands hunched against the chill grey wind off the North Sea. The life of Buckie comes from the sea, from fishing and from shipbuilding. Many fine, strong ships have been built here. This story tells how one of them left Scotland for a strange and a distant land. The gallant schooner Captain Scott was built here in Buckie in 1971 as an adventure training ship for the Dulverton Trust. 144 feet long and displacing 380 tons, she can accommodate 36 cadets. Because of rising costs, she has been sold and lies alongside, fitting out for the voyage to her new home. So the figurehead of the great Antarctic explorer Captain Robert Falcon Scott is replaced by a new one which symbolizes the youth of Oman. The Captain Scott, renamed Youth of Oman, has been bought by the Sultanate of Oman as a training and recreation ship for the Ministry of Youth Affairs. Under her new flag, the Youth of Oman seems eager to be off. At last, it's time to say farewell in traditional Scottish style. The last line is cast off, and the Youth of Oman is outward bound.
Ahead, you.
Many of the crew were British sea cadets, but 2 officers and 20 cadets had flown over from Oman to help bring their ship home.
He's the starboard 10. He's the 10. Good ship. Big ship. Whale's red ship.
Once clear of the harbour, it was all hands make sail. As the sails fill and the bow dips in salute to the open sea, the land and its memories fall away. Steadily, the Youth of Oman forges along the English coast as the crew get to know each other and their ship. Oil rigs, one of the hazards of the North Sea. It was the development of Oman through oil revenues that led to the purchase of the former Captain Scott. After 3 days at sea, the Youth of Oman arrived at her first port of call, Portsmouth, to embark final stores and provisions near Nelson's famous flagship HMS Victory. in the dockyard, a statue to Captain Scott. He sailed from Portsmouth on his journey to the South Pole. With all the gear carefully stowed, the crew now worked their ship out of Portsmouth with the confidence of veterans. The last link with the land is broken when they drop the pilot. Under all plain sail, the Youth of Oman slips down the Solent between the Isle of Wight and the mainland. Departure point, the Needles Lighthouse on the Isle of Wight, the last sight of Britain. Next stop, Gibraltar. With a headwind and a rough sea, the ship is something of a handful for a makey-learn helmsman. The Bay of Biscay lives up to expectations, giving the crew a real feeling for the sea. A chance encounter with a fellow sail training ship, the Argentine Navy's full-rigged ship Libertad, of nearly 4,000 tons. The Libertad has a complement of 520 officers, cadets and crew. As the sun grows hotter, the navigator marks off the ship's run. While on deck, the crew carry on with the endless job of caring for the ship. Luckily for them, holy stones have gone out of fashion. Polishing brass is an unceasing task in the salt air. The boatswain passes on his skill in making good the rigging. And there's always something that needs painting. For the Muslims on board, a call to prayer.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. سمع الله لمن حمده.
And for all the crew, a service off Cape Trafalgar to commemorate the victorious battle of England's greatest admiral, Lord Horatio Nelson.
Set out, ease! Certainly our greatest admiral, and probably the world's greatest. I will read again his prayer, written the night before Trafalgar, May the great God whom I worship grant to my country and for the benefit of Europe in general a great and glorious victory, and may no misconduct in anyone tarnish it, and may humanity after victory be the predominant feature in the British fleet.
The ship's routine goes on as the days and miles slip by, until a smudge of blue pushes itself up over the horizon. Landfall, Gibraltar. The rock has been a symbol of British strength and endurance since 1704. Tradition says that Gibraltar will remain British as long as there are Barbary apes on the rock. Just to make sure, the army supply a keeper and rations, so the apes are flourishing. Down in the town, the busy streets prove that nowadays Gibraltar is more of a tourist resort than a military fortress. And there's lots to do in the warm Mediterranean sun. But all too soon, it's time to set sail once more on the next stage of the voyage. And once again, watch relieves watch in the unceasing rhythm of the sailor's life. A ship is a self-contained community, and a sailor can turn his hand to almost anything. It's not only an army that marches on its stomach, and a well-run galley is essential to a happy ship. The menu on board has to suit the taste of the British and the Omani crew. But there don't seem to be any complaints. The daily ritual of shooting the sun, if only the ship would keep still. The Youth of Oman is a training ship, and instruction in seamanship is an important part of the day with classes held on deck.
On the boat, starboard, on the
But after a busy day comes the moonlit magic of a warm Mediterranean night. Still, the watch on deck is awake and alert. At the eastern end of the Mediterranean lies Port Said, entrance to the Suez Canal, and all about lie the tragic souvenirs of war. The next part of the voyage is made under power. The diesel engines drive twin screws, which, when sailing, can be feathered to reduce resistance. Now they are engaged, giving a cruising speed of 8 knots. The Suez Canal, brainchild of the famous French engineer Ferdinand de Lesseps, was first opened in 1869, linking the Mediterranean and Red Seas and providing the shortest sea route from Europe to the east. The headquarters of the old Suez Canal Company. A dual carriageway section, which allows convoys to pass each other. As the anchor clatters down in Suez, there can be no doubt that the youth of Oman has arrived in the Middle East. The bum boatmen come alongside, hawking their wares of fresh fruit and souvenirs. Clear of the canal, sail can be set again for the long, hot haul through the Red Sea. There's a lot of shipping about, so a careful watch is needed. The source of all the activity and the source of the wealth of the Middle East. Even here, the production wells have moved offshore. Now the Red Sea decides to turn ugly. With a deadline to meet, the youth of Oman has no choice but to plough into the Head Sea under power. But every gale blows itself out sooner or later, and the youth of Oman finds welcome peace and shelter in Djibouti. For the crew, it's a chance to look around a strange, exotic African port. Djibouti is the capital of the territory known as French Somaliland before independence. It's a bustling port and an important center of trade in the Horn of Africa. It's also another splendid place to pick up souvenirs. But all too soon comes the by now familiar cry, all hands make sail. For generations, sailors have washed their own clothes, though the washing machine is a recent refinement. An upturned awning makes an effective, if crowded, swimming pool. When the spin dryer has done its worst, the clothes can be hung to dry in the wind, if there is any. Becalmed, the burden most hard for a sailor to bear. Day after day, day after day, we lay, nor breath nor motion, as idle as a painted ship upon a painted ocean. But calms, like gales, must end sometime, and at last the ragged mountains of Oman reach out to welcome them. Muscat, journey's end. The passage crew furl the sails for the last time before the youth of Oman is handed over to her new owners. Commerce has always been in the bloodstream of the Omanis. Their mercantile empire straddled the Indian Ocean. Throughout the centuries, exports of frankincense, fresh limes and dates brought prosperity to the enterprising seamen of Oman. Through Muscat passed the exotic trade of the Far East with Persia and Arabia, and also to Portugal. Until a few years ago, the Sultanate of Oman was a closed and secretive place, undeveloped and unwelcoming of strangers. But now the oil revenues are being spent in a massive program of development. The change was brought about by the young Sultan Qaboos ibn Said, who came to the throne in 1970. Today, Oman is a fascinating blend of old and new. This ancient fort contrasts with the modern port of Muttra, one of the fastest growing ports in the Persian Gulf. This ship, the Sultana, carried the first Arab diplomatic mission to America in 1840. The Omanis are famous sailors, most famous of all being Sinbad the Sailor, whose exploits, like all travelers' tales, have lost nothing in the telling and retelling. The Omanis are a proud people for whom personal weapons are still part of everyday dress. In the harbour at Muttra, the handover ceremony of the youth of Oman. Officially receiving the ship is the Minister for Youth Affairs, Said Fahar bin Tema, the Sultan's uncle. A gift for each member of the Youth of Oman's passage crew. Much of the development in Oman is concentrated on the young, as the purchase of this ship goes to show. Since 1970, the number of children in school has risen from a mere 900 to over 70,000, and the process of education is still growing. And so the former Captain Scott settles down in her new home. But not for long. She's soon at work out where she now belongs, in the bright blue waters of the Persian Gulf, teaching the sons of Sinbad the modern ways of the sea. The Captain Scott has gone east. The youth of Oman has come home.